G'day to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I'm just sitting here in my front lawn, just getting sun-drenched by this beautiful autumn sun. And as I say time and time again, autumn is by far the best time of year to enjoy Sydney. Anyway, let's kick off another book summary. This is my 995th book summary. I've got 5 to go in order to reach my 1,000 in English. And today is my 61st birthday. And I'm just very, very grateful to have reached this stage of my life, to still be healthy, to have a healthy family, and to look forward to many good days ahead for all of us, not just myself, because I wish everybody has good health and a bright future. What I want to talk about today is a topic which is a really, really interesting topic, and it's something I think that we've all basically become aware of over the past 2 or 3 decades. The book is entitled The End of Power by Moises Naim. He's an author who bit the bullet and wrote about a very interesting topic about the end of power. And the book is, whilst it's titled The End of Power, I guess what the author is basically trying to suggest to us is that there's been a shift in the way power is expressed, and that power continues to be an important element in our lives, but the ways that it's expressed has changed dramatically over time, and we'll just go through and we'll peel the onion and examine it from the author's perspective and see where it leads us, how we can use it, how we can incorporate it into our lifestyle, into our skill sets, and to pass the important messages on to our children, grandchildren, and future generations. So the author makes a very, very bold statement to kick the book off, and it's quite unsettling, to tell you the truth, because I guess, within the 61 years that I've lived, I've seen a dramatic change in the way things happen, very much so, where I say to myself that all the things that I grew up on knowing were right, people try to convince me that they're all wrong, and all the things that I grew up on knowing that were very, very wrong, people are now trying to convince me that all of those things are right. So we live in turbulent times, and changing times is probably the best way to describe it. So the author, in their own very words, a quote from the book, is that power is shifting, right? So power is shifting. So we're making a very, very important point, that the type of power and the use of power and the expression of power is shifting from brawn to brain. So from the strong ones to the clever ones, or the ones who think they're clever. From north to south. I think traditionally, northern parts of countries or northern hemisphere was more powerful than the southern part. From west to east, a move of power from Western civilization, more so to Eastern civilization in the years to come. And it's gone from the corporate to the startup, to the nimble startup. So when I first started working, I worked for some massive major corporates like IBM. But over a decade or 3, their power base, their huge market leadership and penetration has been negated and neutralised by a number of new competitors coming into the market and attacking IBM at different points of the market and stealing vital market share from them. And basically, it's like the Swiss cheese. Now you can see the outline of the cheese, but there are all these holes in the cheese. So a lot of that market share is now shared with the small, nimble startups who have become, mega organisations as well over the past 10 or 20 years. Organisations like Facebook, like Microsoft, like Apple, organisations, Instagram, you name it. You can probably name more of them than what I can. But what we're saying here is that the shift of power over the past 3 decades has been facilitated by a different type of new technology. We've got the internet, we've got information technology. All of those things now have brought power down to the individual level, and information can be disseminated very, very quickly, very, very efficiently, and everybody can use this platform to make a point. So what we're saying now, based on what I've just said here, because I think there are billions of people now who have access to the internet, so you can collaborate with people from all over the world, regardless of their language, regardless of their income, regardless of their geographic footprint. The internet, Facebook, has enabled people to connect with other people who are like-minded in terms of Facebook groups, or you name it. Instagram followers. There are people now who are called influencers, people who have no formal education, people who have no real validity to be an influencer, and yet because of some stroke of luck, or because of something about them which is really, really interesting, they've been able to get a huge following, and based on that huge following, they're able to push an agenda, depending on what that agenda is. And the other thing is, and what's really been, I found quite disturbing as well, is that many, many people, even people of my generation who grew up differently, are changing their minds about many things, which means that we're now at a point in our development and our cultural advancement where we are basically challenging and questioning everything. And there's no longer a common thread that links people together. When I was growing up, most of my friends that I hung out with were Greek Orthodox. We went to school, school together. We watched the same TV programs as everybody else in my age group. We watched the same news, the same current affairs, and there wasn't a plethora of things to do. We all played the same sport. We all watched the same sport. The players in your team stuck with that team, for their whole career. So you got to know and associate people, things with clubs and with groups. But what's happened is, over time, everything, all of that basis, that foundation, that baseline, that benchmark has been annihilated, and people are changing their minds at the drop of a hat. So no longer do we have the strong moral and spiritual compass that my parents, my grandparents may have grown up on. We're all watching different programs. We're all getting programmed by different agendas, by different messages. Our children are being taught things which are different to the sort of things that we were taught when we were going to school. So the fact that people are changing their minds on everything makes it really, really challenging for anybody to be able to agree on anything these days. So the other important thing to understand is that because people are becoming wealthier across the board, China, for example, there are 700 million people in China who are no longer on the poverty line and are now considered middle class. So we've got all these massive changes in class structures throughout the world, and this emerging middle class wants more of the things that we grew up on. You know, more freedom, more fairness, more transparency, more property. And it's getting to the point now where it's sad to say, you know, this year, God willing, I'll be celebrating my 36th wedding anniversary with Paula. But we're at a time now where marriage has become almost obsolete. Many people get married, and within a year to 5 years, they're divorced, and they're off trying to find another relationship. And you know, another thing that's which is also happening. So we've lost trust, we've lost respect in the institution of marriage. We've lost trust and respect in the institution of church. We mistrust authority. You know, we're at a point now where you've got leaders, regardless of who the leader is, and you've got so many people who just disrespect the office. They disrespect the leader and they disrespect the office. You trip up once or have one sort of issue, which we're all going to have issues in our lives, and people are going to slaughter you in the public arena using social media. So the message gets out really quickly, and it brings out the tiger, it brings out the lion in even the most quiet people. I see some comments on Facebook amongst some Greek groups that I'm in, amongst some religious groups. Now, you name it. The comments and the vitriol that is commonplace now, where I say to people, if you and I were face to face, would you dare say what you're saying on Facebook or on social media to my face? It's a very important point to make to people. Would you say what you're saying to my face and expect to get away without some sort of backlash? So it's important to understand that and to make the point. So what we're saying here is now that political power no longer has the clout that it once had, because these days political leaders have lost a lot of power. You just look around, even Australia. Australia is a great example. Now we've got great leadership in terms of the federal government. We've got the great leadership. I can't talk about the other states, but Gladys Berejiklian is showing outstanding leadership. And yet these leaders are constantly under attack from the left, from within their parties, you name it. Every Tom, Dick and Harry will have an opinion and will take the leaders to task. And the other challenges that we face here is that throughout the world there's been a greater spread of democracy. So democracy is great from one aspect. So just to put it into perspective, in 1947, according to this author, there were 67 sovereign states, and now today there are 193 members of the United Nations. In 1970, there were 2 times more autocracies than democracies, whereas now there are 4 times more democracies than autocratic rule. So the world has gone more democratic. But the question is, with governments now and with social media, that democracy is not a stable democracy. You'll find that at elections now it's a 50-50. It's almost a hung parliament across the world in whichever elections are being held. So there's no clear majority, there's no clear mandate, and you get 1 or 2 independents who are holding all the power as opposed to the government that gets voted in. The other thing that the author talks about here, about these theoretical democracies, is that governments have far more elections now, and there's a pressure to act immediately on whatever the flavour of the month is. And leaders are hence less effective because every step of the way they're under the microscope. These days you've got 4 years to do what you have to do, or whatever your election term is, and chances are if you don't do or don't keep a vocal minority happy, then they have the power to cause significant grief with being loud and vociferous and active on social media, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, be it Twitter, you name it. But we see it all the time now. Politics now has become more of a strategic game where people are able to throw money at groups to be able to disrupt certain candidates, certain policies, just to get their point across. And with all of this identity politics, which has flooded the world at the moment, we have never been more divided and more against each other than at any other time in the history of mankind. So the distribution of power is the third point that comes from this author. Has its benefits and challenges, but the crumbling power causes disorganisation. So, as I said before, by not having a strong mandate through an election process, by having a democracy but not having a strong mandate, the power is crumbled, which causes disorganisation, and leaders are unable to act with effectiveness. The most important thing of all, and I've learned this over the years, it's the most important lesson I learnt when I was at IBM. The most important lesson I learnt at IBM was that most important thing to do is to make a decision. Any decision. As long as you can make a decision and act on that decision. And once you act and are capable of acting on a decision, then 2 months, 3 months, 6 months down the track, you assess that decision, you assess the actions, and you assess the outcomes. And if the outcomes don't serve you, then you change your decision. It's as simple as that. But we're now in a period of time where people just can't act. You decide and then somebody will veto it. You decide, the government will get voted out. So we can't get effective government because we can't get a government to focus on the long-term picture in terms of where we need to be. So the other thing also, which concerns me, and I saw it happen in Greece, where Tsipras came in, was voted in because he was a popular leader, but he and his whole party were inexperienced and absolutely hopeless, in my opinion, and in the results which ensued from Greece during the period of his reign. This author also reminds us that by chopping and changing leadership all the time, you're replacing experienced people who know what they're doing and are trying their best to get things done with inexperienced people who think that they know what they're doing but have got no way of achieving anything anyway. And as an example, I was up at the Hope Estate over the weekend for the Greek Fest. It was a Greek festival that was run at the regional level, and from my perspective it was an absolute treat. It was a success. It was an inaugural event. We had a performer from Greece, Dimitris Bassis, come and perform, and it was a magnificent day, weather-wise, similar to today, and I had a great time. And yet the social media got on board and started to attack the organisers, because they love attacking the organisers. And as I say to people, regardless of who organised that event, regardless of how perfectly that event was going to be organised, there was always going to be the vocal minority. And interestingly enough, most of the people who are complaining and who are leading the vitriol on social media are the people who weren't even bloody there. So if you weren't there, how can you comment and think that you know what you're talking about, other than the reports that you've been reading, which may have been shaped from a political perspective to follow an agenda of disruption and disunity. So as we said here, who would want, and I've said it time and time again, who would want to be an organiser for a Greek Orthodox or a Greek community, a Greek Australian community, when you know that whatever you do, you're going to be ripped to shreds and attacked, because you've got 5,000 people attend, you're going to have 5,000 tastes to attend to. Some people will want their regional music. Other people will want a particular style of music. Some people want souvlaki. Other people want other sort of food. Regardless of what you do, there's going to be those people who are never, ever going to be fulfilled, because it's the style of person that they are. They always want to whinge. They always want to complain. So enough on that, because once I get caught up on that tangent, I'll need another 2 or 3 hours to talk on this 5am club. So the bottom line here is that people have lost their perspective, and leaders have shorter time in power, which means that they've got no investment, or very, very little investment in the long-term benefits, because they haven't got enough time to A, get started, B, get the money, build momentum, and C, see it through. So I think I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. I've come to you from my front yard on this glorious, beautiful autumn day. It feels more like a spring day or a summer's day. Just glorious, beautiful. That sun is so nurturing. I could sit here for hours. Anyway, we've just enjoyed going through another book summary entitled The End of Power by Moises Naim, and I hope you got something out of it, and I most certainly did. It certainly put a few things into perspective for me, given the things that have been happening over the past decade or two, and even just over the past weekend, just to see the emotion that people have been able to bubble to the surface is quite frightening. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope we can get together again to be partners in each other's growth and development, where we can be the wind beneath our wings, and we can make the most of this day, where we can live, learn and pass it on, and help each other grow and develop and become better versions of ourselves. Γεια σας, take care. Christos Anesti once again. And once again, it's my birthday today. I turned 61, and I'm just very, very grateful to have got to this stage of my life, to still have my health, God willing, and for my family to still be blessed with health, and to wish the same for each and every person around me. Yassas, take care, que taleme. Bye for now. Cheers.